Good afternoon, everyone. It is Friday, which means we're heading into the weekend. It's 12 noon, which also means that it's time for Lessons in Leadership. I'm Mary Gregory, and I'm very pleased to be welcoming Trevor Emdon here today for our episode 36. Hello, Trevor. Nice to have you here.
Hello, Mary, and everyone who's watching and listening.
Yes. So if you are watching and listening, please do remember to add your name because we are on StreamYard and that doesn't translate always into Facebook. So we want you to add your name before you speak because we'd love to see your messages and we do respond to all messages as well. But coming back to you, Trevor, I'm really delighted to have you here today because you call yourself a marketing strategist. And, this conversation is about leadership and lessons in leadership. And yet I see you as so much more than a marketing strategist, which really goes back to your background because you trained as a psychiatric nurse and worked as a psychiatric nurse for many, many years. In fact, you were in a similar field to me in that adolescent psychiatry, I believe.
I was for a while,
yeah, whereas I was in child and adolescent psychiatry. So we have some parallel interests here. But what I'm curious about is your journey from working in psychiatry to also training to be a psychotherapist, which to me brings up all sorts of connotations that are very different to marketing. So when I think of marketing, I don't necessarily put that together with psychotherapy. So I'm really interested to explore some of that with you today. But I'd like to kick off by just asking you a bit about your journey and what caused you to shift from psychiatric nursing and psychotherapy into marketing?
It wasn't an overnight decision to waking up one morning and think, I think I'll just abandon psychotherapy and do marketing. It was, I drifted into it really by a series of, so what happened was I was working in the National Health Service, obviously you and I are both British, but for any non-British people that are watching, the NHS National Health Service, and things were, over the years, things began to change, apart from the obvious, like I got older, but the consultant that I'd worked with for 10 years was on the verge of retirement, and he'd been a great mentor and friend to me, and remained a friend to me for the rest of his life. My marriage was breaking up, my first marriage. I'm going back to the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And so there came a point where it was time for me to move on, but I wasn't sure what to move on to. And one of the things that I had always loved since school really has been writing. And during my career, I wrote for a number of magazines and got published, to my amazement to begin with. It's like, oh, it's a check. They've sent me a check instead of a rejection letter. So that was good. So I knew I could do that. I didn't know if I could do it for a living, but it was one of the things that I'd always wanted to do, write books and articles and that sort of thing. And you've got on the screen the title of one of my books, Why Aren't Beggars Rich? If anybody wants to go onto Amazon and type in my name, there's a few books there.
How many books have you actually written?
Oh, I don't know. 10.
Wow.
So. Some of them are quite short,
yes.
But yeah, as they occur to me, I might tend to write them.
Great.
Yeah, so, and most of them are on Kindle only. So they're there's one that's paperback called The Book of Being, which I can talk about. That's kind of relevant as well to what we're talking about here.
Yes, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it was. Yes, it's a kind of personal development plus, that one really. And,
right.
Yeah. Anyway, could obviously go down a lot of sidetracks, but the journey was to do one of the things I thought I would do post my NHS career was writing. And to begin with, of course, it was just ad hoc. It was as it had always been. And then the internet came about, late 90s, early 2000s. I had no idea how to use it. And just to fill in, modern people, there was no Google, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. You couldn't, I think if you tried even to put a colored image up online, it would take hours and hours and hours to download. All you could do was text, really. There were early search engines. I don't remember what they were called. I think Yahoo was probably one of the first. Many have just disappeared or got absorbed into the others. But when it came along, I suddenly saw here was a resource that I could use to get my work out to the public without going through editors and even agents. I just write it, put it up online. I didn't even know what the word upload meant. I was that naive about it. But so I started writing, eventually figured out how to upload it, and nobody came. And I was a bit perplexed to start with. And then I started asking friends who had a bit more internet knowledge than me. And bit by bit, it dawned on me that I needed to do this thing called marketing. And so, again, to begin with, I was faced with this enormous, what I thought was this enormous mountain. Like, where do I even start? Until at some point, and I can't pinpoint it exactly, the penny dropped that marketing and psychotherapy are not that dissimilar. And what I mean by that is, so you think, I mean, you will know some of this from your own background, but when you've got a patient, a client, or in my case, as it often was, and possibly in yours as well, a family in front of you who are in distress, you've got a very limited amount of time to do something that's going to make, hopefully, a positive difference to them in their distress. And all you can do is listen, try to hear what you see is causing the distress, what their blind spots are in a way, and then say something to them so that by the end of your hour or whatever it is with them, they can walk through the door they came in through and say, thanks very much, we can take it from here, right? That they've got some relief, some understanding, and they've shifted in some way. Their perspective has shifted. And that's what marketing does too. To begin with, when you're struggling with something, if you're on the customer's end, you're struggling with something. So I wonder if there's a way of solving this problem. So you go onto Google, maybe you go onto YouTube, you go searching for an answer, and up pops something. Might be a book, might be a website, might be a blog post. Who knows? The answers can be anywhere. And you go, oh, they're talking to me. That's my problem. They've got this. And if you can show them that you understand their problem, which is what a psychotherapist has to do. Like, there's no point in a psychotherapist going, oh, I know what it is, and just being a smart aleck, because that just rubs people up the wrong way.
Yeah.
So you've got to have the empathy, and then you've got to explain why it will make a difference, and then show them, well, if you do this, then the change will happen. And in our case as marketers, this is press the buy button.
Yes.
But the same basic mechanism. It's about how people are wired to, and all marketing / selling is really doing, if it's done well, is shifting people's understanding and perspective. So, oh, that's where the answer is. I could do that, so that they've got belief, they've got hope, and then they'll have desire to, like, okay, I want more of that, and then they're going to push the buy button.
So it's almost like, psychotherapy is all about creating insights and understanding, isn't it? So, and then shining a light on the way forward. Marketing parallels that, in that it creates an insight for somebody around what their pain might be, what they might need, and then what the solution could be for them, which for many of us is the case of, please come to me. I think I can support and help you.
Exactly.
You want them to buy from you.
Exactly that. So you do in miniature, each time you put an offer out there, you are setting yourself up in leadership.
Yes.
This is lessons in leadership. So you are saying, in a sense, I've hacked my way through more of this particular jungle than you. It doesn't mean that you're a world expert on absolutely everything. Most of us are never going to be that about anything. But I often refer to this, and I'm never quite sure whether it's a good reference or not. But if you've seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, Leonardo.
Oh, I have. It's a great movie.
Great movie.
Highly recommend it. If people haven't watched it, watch it. It's a really great movie.
It's a great movie, and it's a true story.
Yeah.
It's about a man whose name I always get wrong. I think it's Frank Abagnale. I always want to say Abnegale, but I think it's Abagnale, who's, as far as I know, still alive. and now also, as far as I know, a decent citizen. But what Frank did, and it was illegal, but I like the guile. What he did was he was an imposter. He posed as all kinds of different things, including, I believe, airline pilot.
Yes.
And all sorts of things that he had no and surgeon, I think, all sorts of things that he had no qualifications in, and managed to get away with it. Well, until he was eventually caught. But the story that I like, and I'm not sure if it's in the movie or not, is when he posed as a college lecturer in sociology, I think it was, and he was there for 2 or 3 years before somebody cottoned on that he had absolutely no qualifications in sociology, let alone teaching whatsoever. And when he was asked how he'd gotten away with it, he simply said, well, I only had to read one more chapter than the students. And that's it. That's you, me, other people in online who are trying to make a living. I'm not, I come across so many clients and other people who are saying, but I don't know enough, or I should get a qualification, or I should get a certification. I say, well, can you help people? Well, yeah. Well, then I've never been asked since I've been online coaching, which is in full time since 2014 now. Have you got a qualification in it? Never, ever, ever. Probably will be now.
I certainly think people are asking more often than they used to about qualifications for coaching, but it does make me think about the moral element of this. That certainly for something like coaching and for psychotherapy, the same, you are working with people in a very personal way. There is a psychological contract, and you are impacting people in terms of how they might think or feel about things. So there does come an element of responsibility with that as someone working with those people. So
for sure.
For me, it's not, it concerns me slightly that so I know, for example, the coaching market, for example, has been flooded in the last 10 years with people who have maybe done a 3-month coaching qualification and that's it, and they're qualified as a coach. And actually, it takes a lot more than just 3 months training and a qualification and then to go out to practice, I think. So there is a moral dilemma for me there as well, that it's not just, I need to be one step ahead. I know you need to... And what am I trying to say here? I know as a coach, I'm often working on issues that are far bigger than my clients. And that's my supervisor encourages me with that. So I'm still always working on my own stuff. But it's also making sure you're responsible enough and conscious enough to not impact your clients in a way that could potentially be negative. Does that make sense? I'm not sure.
No, I totally agree with all of that. I think that there are some... Yeah, what I was thinking while you were saying that was there are two sides to that coin as well. I think there are definitely some human qualities that if you haven't got them, don't coach. Like you definitely need to like people. You need to have a good degree of empathy, and you definitely need, I think, a focus on what you're going to coach them about. You can't just generically coach everybody about absolutely anything. I'm working with somebody at the moment, for example, who's moving into parenting coaching. And she's a teacher, so she has a lot of skills and with parents and with kids, and she has her own kids and they're amazing. So she doesn't have per se a qualification in coaching, but I think she's more than qualified to do this job. I also think that I would say don't coach other people without having your own coach. I would not be anywhere near where I am or who I am without my own coach. That's really important, because you get the supervision and it literally means that the outside vision, the bigger view that only a coach can see and say, hang on a minute, do you realize that when you do that, it's having that effect? Or I thought that it might have that.
Well, it helps you stop getting in your own way, or helps you get, And I mean, I think the other thing for me is that it's the ego element, I think, that would worry me, that, coming out of a 3-month training program, I'm a coach. How conscious are you of your own ego and the impact you might be having on others? I like
to think, maybe this is naive, but I like to think that it's kind of self-regulating, because if people come across with that attitude, the clients are soon going to ditch them. We're living in a very public, this is a big goldfish bowl that we're now all in. I mean, here we are you and I now live on a public platform. No idea who's watching or who will ever watch this. But, you know, it could be, we don't know where this will ever go, but it's out there forever now.
Yes, yes.
And I'm comfortable with that because I'm comfortable with who I am, and I'm sure you're comfortable with who you are. But I think if you come at coaching with a kind of look at me attitude, that's soon gonna.
Yeah. I think there are coaches out there who are quite successful, financially successful. I would say there are coaches out there like that.
There's no doubt about that. But while you were saying that, the other thing that went through my head was that when I was in nursing and I was, you know, in a very senior role, one of my jobs was to interview and appoint other nurses, and there would be people who would come through those doors who in a million years I would think, you should not be looking after other people. Your attitude is awful. But they had the qualifications, they passed all their exams.
Yeah.
You know, they'd somehow gone through the entire training, presumably with that personality. Don't suppose they changed it on interview day. And yet they would come through and I was like, I can't work with that person.
No.
So I think it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you've got a qualification, you are therefore okay to go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. And there's something like there's hundreds and thousands of people in the world, millions of people in the world. There are hundreds and thousands of coaches, and I suppose it's finding the right coach for you as well. But I you know, it does concern me sometimes that you get people who aren't necessarily, it's not that they're not qualified, but they're not doing the work on themselves. So they therefore get in their own way, which is why I think I'm curious about psychotherapy and business. I think there's some great ways it can be intertwined, and what you've done, coming back to you, we've just done a massive digression there, I realized, but just think it was an interesting point. Coming back to you, you know, you've intertwined it in a very clever way in terms of supporting consultants and coaches to do their marketing. So it's impressive. So when you got that realization, what did you do when you realized actually?
The first thing I did was mop my brow. It's like, oh, I see. It's the same principles, and it is not. I mean, I don't want to give people the impression that this is complicated either. You don't need to train in psychotherapy in order to do what I now do.
Yes.
It's just a case of. It's probably best if I give you an example, really. So let me try and do that. It's just a case of listening in the right way and in the right order as well. So and I mean, this is common marketing knowledge as well. So if you're researching your niche, which is a marketing word, not a psychotherapy word, right? Yeah. Then you need to understand that market's pain points. Why are they hurting? What's keeping them awake at night? In fact, I did a training online last night where I touched on this. So, for example, so the way I explain it is like this. So whether in psychotherapy and in marketing, the person at the other end, the person who wants help, there's a gap between, let me try and get that in front of the camera. There's a gap between where they are and where they want to be. Camera moves the wrong way. Where they are and where they want to be, right? And they can't close that gap. They don't know why they can't close that gap. They know it's closable because they can see there are other people. I can't actually go in the opposite direction. There are other people who've done it, right? So they know it's possible. It's like they can't do it. So why can't they do it? So your job, whether you're doing psychotherapy or whether you're talking to a prospective client, is to find out why they believe they can't bridge that gap, right? And it's their beliefs that you're looking for, because it's exactly the same in psychotherapy. Why do you think this pattern of violence from your teenager keeps happening, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, right? And they will tell you what their belief is about why it keeps happening. I've got to be careful what I say here, but we had, remember we had a boy who was a child of a single mum. They were lovely. They were both lovely people. And he was really mild-mannered, this kid. But every so often, he'd erupt into some kind of violence, only at home. And there'd be a terrible physical fight in which at least one of them would end up with some kind of bruising or worse injury.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't me, it was one of the doctors asked the mum, well, why do you think that happens? And she said, chocolate. And the doctor said, oh. And she said, yeah, it's chocolate. Whenever he has chocolate, straight away, within an hour, we have one of these tantrums. So we said, well, let's try it. And so the doctor actually prescribed chocolate while he was in our care. So the other kids were like, he gets chocolate, right? So this poor lad, he was a lucky lad, I suppose. But it literally every day after lunch, the doctor would go out. There was a little shop around the corner, and he'd buy a bar of chocolate, and then the next day a bigger bar of chocolate, and then 2 bars of chocolate, and then eventually he got the big £2 bar of chocolate, whatever it was. And he said, right, I want to see how long it takes before you're violent. Please sit and eat that, and we'll watch you. We don't worry, if we won't let you hurt anyone. And so this kid was like, okay, so he'd eat the chocolate and nothing would happen, and then nothing would happen, and eventually the whole big bar said, please don't make me eat that. And went on for like a week, and he was never violent. So then we could say it's not the chocolate. Now let's look at what's going on. So it was quite. So that's the psychotherapy kind of. That was the beginning of an intervention. It was a bit of work with that family, but with a client in marketing, it's the same principles. Now you're hopefully not working with people who are struggling with violence from each other, but people are struggling with making money or marketing a product that they want to, or whatever. We know what the kind of problems are. It's like, why do you think you're struggling with that and other people aren't? And then they'll start to tell you what's going on, and what they will essentially tell you is what their beliefs are about why that's going on. That's what's limiting them. And what you're doing is you're providing the supervision, the outside. I think one of my mentors used to say, supervision is like if somebody's climbing a rock face and you're on the beach down below and you've got the walkie-talkie and the binoculars, and they get stuck. They're halfway up and they get stuck and they don't know what to do. And you can look up and go, just reach over a bit more to the left, and there's a handhold up there, so they can move again. That's all you're doing, really. And that's
I'm loving all these metaphors, by the way. They're great. So what I'm really getting then is when you work with your clients, to support them with their marketing, you're actually working on their beliefs about themselves and their marketing.
I mean, there are obviously some practical things as well, but what I'm really looking at is the psychology of the dynamics between them and their clients. Because there's a lot of stuff well, haven't I got to do this? And everybody says that. I mean, a classic one today, for example, is, but I've got to have a website, right? And so it's like, well, have you really got to have a website? At one time, that would have been absolutely the case, but now with all the social media, it's like, well, what's the website for? The website ultimately is so that you can showcase whatever it is you do, but then you've got to get traffic to it. Right. So the difficulty today is that a website can become a real white elephant. They're quite expensive to create. It's got to have exactly the right message on it. And then you've got to target the traffic and drive that traffic. And that's definitely going to cost you in time and or money, and probably both. Do that. Whereas you could put your message in front of people straight away on Facebook, LinkedIn, all these platforms. And if you do that in the right way, you can start your business without ever having a website. Get the website later down the road. It's that kind of thing. So it's like, let's get your business up and running, and then we can put the whistles and bells on, because a website is now a whistle and a bell. It's not
a fundamental anymore.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so you're working with some practical things as well as the person's beliefs around themselves and around what's possible for them as they reach out to customers. How can people get hold of you, Trevor, if they want to work with you?
The easiest way is just schedule a call with me. I'm happy to chat with anybody about these things. Obviously, there's no charge for that. Just go to trevoremdon.com. My name's on the screen, so it's all one word, but EMDON. I've learned over the years to spell it out because people don't get it right. trevoremdon.com/talk to me. And that will take you to my my schedule page, and then just book a chat.
I like that.
You can say, saw you on Lessons with Leadership with Mary, and if you want to do that, so I know where you came from, that would help.
That's great.
Trevor.com/talk to me.
Great. Okay. Well, we've had a very enriching discussion here. We've gone in directions I never actually anticipated we'd go in, but I hope you found it valuable to share your thinking with us this morning. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Trevor. What are your final thoughts in terms of, as we move forward? In the UK, we're coming out of lockdown rather abruptly. We're coming out of lockdown, but we are coming out of it, or we're out of it.
And somewhat nervous, yes, but
yeah, we're all a bit nervous about it because the figures are going up, but we are out of it. But we're still in these times of uncertainty. What are your sort of final thoughts or parting words you'd like to leave people with today?
I suppose I would say people's needs haven't changed. They haven't changed, not just through the pandemic, but throughout all of history. We've still got the same, basically, we still want to make a difference. We still want to be liked. We still want to help other people, and we still want to feel that our lives are worth living. So if you have a dream and there's a gap between that dream and where you are, it's only something in your thinking that is stopping you. And
yes,
let's talk, because it is possible to break that.
Yes.
That's what makes life worth living.
We possess our own psychic prisons, as it were, isn't it?
Exactly.
We put our own walls around us rather than breaking them down and breaking through them.
I was my own first escapee, trust me.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real delight, very enlightening. We have definitely gone in directions I didn't actually anticipate we'd go in, but thoroughly enjoyable. And I hope that those that are watching or that are watching afterwards, please do put your comments below the video. We always respond to any comments that get put in there. I hope you equally have found it valuable today to get a sense of how we can hold ourselves back or not, as the case may be. Thank you, Trevor.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Mary.
And just to remind everyone, we are back next week at 12 noon. And next week, I am interviewing Janie Van Hool, who is recently published as an author of The Listening Shift. She is a former actress who now has worked for many, many years with organizations, helping them through transformation, through supporting leaders' communication, and is absolutely brilliant at it. I've been privileged to be part of one of her workshops in the past. She's just excellent. So I'm looking forward to seeing Janie then. Otherwise, time to say our fond farewells, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.